Welcome to the ADHD Creative Club podcast, the place for neurodivergent creative entrepreneurs and freelancers to learn new ways of navigating the ever-turbulent world of life and business. I'm absolutely delighted today to be welcoming a photographer, a director, a curator who's recognised around the world for his incredible work, especially his photography. His clients have included the New York Times, Airbnb, Discovery Channel, just to name a few of a really extensive, amazing list. And he's also an ADHD creative. So I'm very pleased to welcome Wesley Verhoeve. Thank you so much for coming on today, Wesley. How are you?
I am quite well, and I was in my mind, I was laughing when you said creatives with ADHD because I almost feel you could just say creatives.
So true. So in terms of your journey then, can you share a little bit about obviously your incredible photography work and that journey, but with ADHD kind of running alongside it and how that's kind of impacted you maybe?
You know, as you'll well recognize, it's of course a knife that cuts both ways. You know, so we have our positives and we have our challenges, and I think they're very similar for many people. So for me, the positives is my hyper focus, my the way my brain can make random links very very fast, and come up with many ideas and pursue them doggedly, sometimes to the detriment of other things, of course.
Yeah.
And then the challenges, in my case, are around, or have been actually. We'll get into this later, but I only very recently started on my medication journey, so now I kind of have a different answer from just a few weeks ago. But anyway, traditionally
Amazing.
speaking, my challenges were around um, avoidance behavior, to do with the things that my brain felt very easily overwhelmed by. And that could be anything from paperwork to the financial administrative side of the business, or personal life. And, a variety of those kinds of things. And also, periods in which focus was very challenging in general. Um, and well, my diagnosis is relatively late. It will only happen about four-ish years ago. And when I did get that diagnosis, it was very helpful, and it enabled me to place, a few things fell in place. It enabled me to see things for not so much what I had kind of thought or was led to think, but more so what it was. So that there's certain challenges that are just a bit harder for me than for people who don't have anything to do with ADHD, and that there's also like I said, the beautiful things that I do have that are perhaps a bit harder for other people. So it helped me accept some of those things and work towards, dealing with those challenges in a more healthy way.
So what led you to kind of going down initially the diagnosis route? Were there things that kind of, how did you first notice that maybe there was something a bit different?
I didn't notice it at all. It was actually, I was, it was a therapist who said, well, after working with you for a certain period, I'm fairly certain that you have inattentive ADHD. So it's like a subdivision there. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I do? And then when she started to explain it, I was like, oh. And then, then she later diagnosed me, and I recently actually got re-diagnosed because I moved continents, and so that required a re-diagnosis, and so I had to fill out a bunch of, well, you know how it works,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's how it came out. So it wasn't really any suspicion on my end because it was so late in life that it was, um, I wasn't really even thinking about it. It was just like I was dealing with stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing these systems that you end up putting in place yourself that you find are working for you. And I've been kind of working backwards because my diagnosis has been very very recent. It's just this year, so I've been working backwards. Thinking, oh my gosh, I've been doing this and I've not even realised it. So you look incredibly busy. I mean, you've got your, for example, like your newsletter. You know, I've embarked on this podcast, which I'm hoping will continue to be a regular thing, but like a newsletter as well is such a commitment. And for somebody with ADHD, it's like, you know, to be consistent with that and to constantly show up, you know, how are you kind of managing that, like kind of day to day and keeping that consistent?
Well, I mean, it was challenging in the beginning, but I am also someone who has always, even pre-diagnosis, has really thrived with routine.
Mm,
Like if I have a habit that I can develop, that helps me tremendously to actually do a thing. And so
mm,
in the past, I learned about how habit forming work, and like there's something called habit stacking, so that you can
yeah.
connect one habit to the next. And so like you kind of already alluded to earlier, you just end up coming up with these hacks, that somehow work for you, that seem very normal, but are not really that common. and and so now, I'm also not going to say everything is so easy. Like, yes, I do put out a weekly newsletter, but even in the past year, there's still been it comes out on Sundays, and still been quite a few weekends where I was working until like Sunday 1 p.m. when it goes out to like finish it, because I just didn't get around to it, or I couldn't get it finished. That's
Yeah.
now not really happening anymore at the moment, but that's a
Mm,
very recent development. Um,
mm,
but they do always go out. So even if I ended up working till the very last moment and I had to sacrifice um, rest and fun, uh, then
yeah.
I would, so that's not necessarily healthy, and it's not how I
Mm.
want to live my life. And so I'm, very committed to not doing that. And so far, so good in the last period.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then obviously you touched on kind of the medication route. So I'm still in my process, kind of waiting for that to kind of happen for me. So I'm very interested. I've spoken to a few people. I've got a good friend as well who's kind of on medication now, and they've just said it's like it's insane, kind of experiencing what it's like for a normal person to kind of how you know, tasks that potentially you'd be putting off day after day, you're suddenly like, right, I can just
Uh,
do it, and it's affecting their relationships in a positive way and things like that. So how's it affected you in terms of like now you're a bit more
well,
potentially
we're
focused, I guess?
still in the phase where you're kind of discovering what it does and how it works for you, because it's still very recent. Um,
Mm,
And the first few days, let's say the first 5 days of my very first thing, which was like the smallest dose they can possibly give you. Um, the first 5 days, I did experience this feeling of like, oh wow, this is like life without anxiety. Like it was very.
mm,
It made me realize that my baseline anxiety was not low. And
yeah.
so those first 5 days, I was like, oh, I feel so relaxed and, sure, focused too. But my main thing that I noticed was just that calmness that I didn't know was a thing that you could feel.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
since then, we've been switching doses and trying things out, as because at some point it's kind of stopped working. That very low dose. I'm still on a super low dose, but now I don't really have that super calm vibe anymore. But I am really focused. So
mm,
still kind of fine tuning that, because I'm not sure if this is really the healthiest thing either, because I'm like super focused all the time, and
yeah.
I'm not necessarily very relaxed. Whereas in the beginning, I was quite focused, not quite as focused as now, but I was also relaxed. And I think there's a balance to find there. And so we're still very much in the
Yeah.
process of finding that, figuring
Mm,
how I can get both of those things.
mm. So, uh, thinking back as well to your photography, so kind of when you started doing that, were you like a real hyper focuser when you were kind of like really into something like
Yeah.
photography? Did you go all in?
Yeah, yeah, that's always been kind of my modus operandi,
Mm,
with anything that I was interested in. which were pretty much all creative things, uh,
Yeah.
and photography is just one of the examples of that. Yeah, it's also
Mm.
I had this conversation the other day where I said, there's like only a few things that that in the past especially could really calm my very busy brain, and that has always been photography if I'm in the flow state, or
Yeah.
I have a passionate hobby, which is improv comedy. And when I'm on stage, it's the same situation. And that's also, I think, because not only is it fun and I can focus on it, but it's also so important to be hyper aware of what's happening around you, and listening to what everybody else is saying on stage, because if you're not super in the moment, it's a disaster. So
Yeah.
that's the hyper focus always worked quite well for me, but of course there's
Mm.
another side to that as well, where that can lead to exhaustion, kind of like what you said.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything is a balance.
Yeah, wow, gosh. That improvisational comedy. I ended up. A friend of mine was running a night, and I ended up doing a little bit of that for the first time recently,
Ah,
and it was a real buzz. And I was surprised how my brain would just kind of like click into gear, and
yeah,
it's like that's fascinating. But from an ADHD perspective, obviously we're desperate for these dopamine hits, and that's why we kind of leave tasks to the last minute and everything like that. So improvisational comedy is like almost the ultimate
yeah,
like dopamine hit, because you're really leaving it to chance,
yeah.
like that's really interesting that you've also gone down that route.
And almost
So
everybody that I know that is like a professional, or
yeah,
like high level amateur like myself, like every one of them has it. In
yeah,
you know,
that's insane.
not everybody the same level, but it's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It would be interesting to know like what the world would be like if we kind of didn't exist as these ADHD people. I think it would be a lot very boring.
Could be, yeah.
Um, going back then to those mundane tasks and things. I think a lot of the people listening are fellow creatives. We all don't necessarily struggle with those like creative outlets and coming up with ideas and being super spontaneous, but it's getting around those, as you've been building your business and obviously been very successful. How have you managed those like mundane tasks? Have you built a team around you? Have you got processes in place? Like if we could just like touch on a bit more like how you've done
Sure.
that, that'd be
I mean,
interesting.
first of all, very poorly. I managed it very poorly for a period,
Yeah.
because I didn't know any better. And then what has helped is just building in more systems and routine,
Mm.
and from to do apps to having help, like an accountant is very important for me to work with, because that's the kind of accountability and expertise that helps me stay on track. Also body doubling. My I've gotten a lot of support from my partner in dealing with some of these kinds of things, and just her presence alone can sometimes already, just to have her sit with me when I have to do one of those things, or she can be doing her own thing or maybe helping me, but that's very helpful.
Mm.
And yeah, just like different kinds of software, that also just normal software, not special ADHD software, but like stuff that works for me because of how it looks. I have a hard time using software that I find visually overwhelming. Um,
Yeah.
so, for example, if we're talking about my newsletter, I use a technology platform called Substack, which is super simple and there's not many bells and whistles. And that's why I can do it, because
Mm.
I wanted to have a newsletter already a bit longer ago before I started, and I had signed up for a MailChimp um, service, which is another company that does newsletters, and I just couldn't do it. It was too overwhelming for me because they have so many options that are wonderful options for people who do email marketing. But for me, I just would sit down and I'd be like, oh boy, that's like so many buttons and so many sections, and I just couldn't get myself to do it. And so for me, it's important to realize that um, I'm a visual person, and if something is visually overwhelming to me, that makes it quite a bit harder for me to do things.
Mm. Yeah. I think I'm exactly the same. With my business, I had a MailChimp. I managed to get kind of one set up, one kind of flow, but it took so long and it was so confusing for me. What's been really interesting actually is with AI, and obviously like that's like the buzz term at the moment. It's kind of what everybody's using for everything all the time, and AI now in regards to kind of building websites and building out systems and stuff, like that's very visual and you don't really need to code anymore. So I do feel like, you know, some of the people with ADHD that are running businesses, or they're, you know, trying to survive and do all of these mundane tasks, I think AI is going to help us quite a lot to kind of take some of those tasks away. And I think that's quite interesting. I wondered, do you use any AI softwares at the moment for what you do? Or?
Well, there's like certain AI software that's or features it's built into like some of the Adobe suite. But that's not really the kind of thing we're talking about here, but like for retouching things and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But I started looking at certain apps that are for coding, kind of like you said, and I'm not a coder at all. And I was quite excited about the prospect of that through natural language, you could potentially at some point create something that's quite cool and quite well coded. So, you know, that's because that's
Yeah.
the skill that I have. And yeah, other than that, you know, I've used ChatGPT here and there for summarizing articles, or there's one called Claude, which is kind of the same thing.
Okay, quick pause, and I mean quick, because I know your ADHD brain is already wondering what's for dinner. If you're vibing with this conversation, imagine having a whole community of creatives who also actually get it. People who understand why you have 47 browser tabs open, why you started 3 businesses last month, and why just make a list is the worst advice ever. That's exactly what I'm trying to build at the ADHD Creative Club. Head to the ADHDcreative.club right now, yes, right now, before you forget, and sign up for tips, tricks, and real talk on surviving as a neurodivergent creative entrepreneur. The ADHDcreative.club. I'll put the link in the show notes because, let's be honest, you're not writing that down. So, all right, back to the conversation. So, in terms of your creativity and going back to kind of your work, because obviously, I'm not a photographer. I'm more of a filmmaker myself, but like I do dabble in photography, and I love your work. It's fantastic, and I think anyone listening, it's well worth checking out Wesley's website. It's wesley.co. Is that correct? We've got that right. I think in terms of, you know, you're grabbing those. It's very varied. You've got kind of your corporate portfolio, you've got more of your street photography, things like that. What do you kind of find you lend yourself more to, or do you love every type of medium of photography, or is there one that really floats your boat and gets you hyper focused?
Well, I would say it splits between two things. It's number one is any photos of people. So that could be editorial for a newspaper or a magazine, but it could also be commercial or corporate if it's like portraits of staff or portraits of customers or marketing campaign that has people at the center of it. I love it because I'm just very curious about people, and I love the process of making them understand the vision, feel comfortable. And then especially I like it when, you know, most normal people are a bit nervous to be photographed, and they kind of come in with this level of anxiety where they're like, well, just so you know, I'm not very photogenic, blah, blah, blah. And it's my favorite thing when after the shoot, which is usually very fast because I shoot much faster than what people are used to, when they see the photo, because I have it tethered on the monitor, for example, and then they're like, oh, oh, that's actually quite nice. Oh, and it's been 2 minutes. I was like, yeah. And then so they walk away happy and they feel seen, and like that, I really like that. So that's one side, pictures of photos. Pictures of people. And then the other side is the kind of observational fine arts street photography side of things, which is, for example, a book that I just published called Notice Journal Volume 1, which is a kind of a sequel to a previous book that I made in Canada called Notice. And that's all mostly black and white, some color, small observations of the little kind of bits of beauty and humor and wonder that you usually run right past because you're just so busy and you don't see it, in this world that we live in. And so I can get super hyper focused with that as well. And that's been a very positive thing for me because it's almost like a meditation for me to engage in photography that way.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Two very different, approaches as well. So, obviously, perfectionism and kind of overthinking is quite a common trait with ADHD. So, how do you combat that when you're doing those very short photo shoots, for example, where you're just like, bang, 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 I've got it. How do you not just sit there and be like, I could have it, but I could do this better or whatever.
Well, it helps to have a tether cable, and you look at the monitor, and then you just see it,
Mhm.
and that's a
Mm.
great way to do it. Also, to make the person comfortable, because if they can see it right away and they like it, then then that's great. Everybody's happy.
Mm. Yeah. And then in regards to kind of the street photography side, I find I don't know whether this is the same with you, but I find that I'm quite blinkered because I can only kind of think about one thing at a time or loads of things at the same time that I've got to worry about. And I do things like my wife gets so frustrated with me because I will walk past things that need to be taken upstairs or the usual day-to-day stuff. So I can imagine actually sitting, standing in an environment and actually just paying attention to it and watching it is probably a really amazing exercise for ADHD and kind of being present in the moment. Do you feel like perhaps that's kind of helped you, or has it changed your perspective in some way?
Well, for me, the key is the camera. If I'm just standing outside without a camera, it's a lot harder for me to
Mm.
be present and look at the street. I can do it, but with the camera, I just am much more motivated because I'm still, even without a camera, if I'm walking on the street, I'm still kind of on and I'm still looking everywhere. It's just more fun with the camera,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, would you recommend that all the creatives out there just go out and kind of maybe just try and shoot? Like, have you got any tips on kind of getting out there and being more present in your environment and looking around and kind of finding that shot?
Well, for me, I think this is not necessarily an ADHD thing, but just a creative thing, which I guess, like we already determined, there's quite a bit of overlap. But my
Yes.
main advice and lesson has always been to focus on action and not on inspiration. Action begets inspiration. So if you just start doing, even if you may feel not so great or not inspired at all or whatever, once you actually move your body and move your mind, you'll find the inspiration, even if it's just a little bit. Like, waiting for it is so much harder than just acting towards it.
Um, yeah, I totally agree. I kind of have done that with this podcast. Actually, I just went for it and was like, I'm going to go for it because that's what I want to do. And it's been already really interesting. I've met some really interesting people, obviously, including yourselves. How do you now address your condition with people around you? Obviously, it's not something that you'll go and kind of walk into a room and just shout about necessarily, but with people close to you. How do you manage that and your differences, perhaps?
Well, it doesn't really come up that much because I've been like I am for so long
Mm.
already that it's just, that's just how it is. Of course, I'm working on being better at these things that are extra challenges for me. But um, most of the people in my immediate community are other creative people, and so
Mm.
not really a surprise or strange to anyone.
Mhm.
Um, in the past, that's been different. There have been people in my life that didn't quite understand it, or didn't feel any kind of empathy towards it, and that's fine. But then that means that they're not going to be that close, you know?
So, thinking about our listeners, you've spoken about some softwares and things that you use kind of day to day. Is there anything that has been like a real aha moment for you? Like a technique or something that you do that's really helped you kind of keep on track of things, keep in the right headspace, that
Mm.
you could perhaps recommend?
Well, it helps me quite a bit to um to keep my calendar very focused, and to also recently I started something that has been very nice, which is that I have these uh, moments of rest on my calendar as well. Just 15 minutes twice a day where I'm supposed to, I didn't do it today, but I'm supposed to like stop and like read something, like just do something that's not work, just to kind of like get some rest from that over focused brain, that
Yeah,
recommendation that I got from my therapist, and that has been nice. And also for me, it's important that I look at my calendar kind of in the morning before anything is supposed to happen, because I will forget about things. Like if I sit down and just start doing a thing like editing photos or writing, uh, I will I will think to myself, "Oh, I have something at 1," and then I just will forget about it right away. So for me,
yeah.
or to look at my also at the end of the day to look at tomorrow to make sure that I have like things lined up properly and know where I'm supposed to be, and um just kind of like constant checking, uh and
Yeah.
and also writing things down, like my to-do list. I have an app that I use called Things, but I also uh from there put things just like in a physical notebook that I can then like, check off, because it somehow works better for me than if I'm only on the computer.
What was the app? Did you say think?
Ding.
Things, sorry,
Yeah.
you broke up there. Things, okay, that's great. I have to check that out. And yeah, I think the physical, writing things down physically is makes such a difference for some reason. Like
Yeah.
the whole post-it note thing as well is
Yeah.
like I find it's really good.
Yeah. I also have this
Um,
fun, this is a little present for my partner. I guess it'll be mirror image for you, but uh, it's a post that says "Don't forget" on it, and so like important things that I really should not forget on there, and I can put in a notebook and or wherever.
yeah, that's really great. Yeah, I think that's really useful. I think also making time to just let your brain just kind of decompress, I think is so important. Like, when you're in that stage where you're working, I don't know whether it's the same with you, but you just get into that mode and you're in work mode. You forget to
Hmm.
drink any water.
Yep.
You haven't been to the toilet,
Hmm.
like
Or food.
or food or anything, and you just
Hmm.
get in that zone. And I think as well, it's kind of part of being organized and organizing your calendar is because I tend to kind of leave things to tasks to build up and build up because I don't schedule time for them.
Hmm.
I end up having to work those times like really long evenings and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's so important. And then it just becomes a bit of a spiral, doesn't it, with your kind
Yep.
of mental health and everything, your
Yep.
mood and
Yeah, and
yeah.
then
So
that can just cascade into something uncontrollable, or if what will feel like uncontrollable, and that's just yeah, it's not what you want.
yeah,
Getting
absolutely.
worse.
Yeah. Okay. And then I guess for me, like inspiration wise, we've talked about kind of getting out and observing the world around you. But obviously, we get inspired all the time as ADHD people.
Hmm.
But how do you, when you have to get a project done and it's a creative project and maybe you're not feeling that inspiration, have you got any advice on like, for example, taking a break and going for a walk, or how do you kind of get that inspiration out of you? If that's the right question.
Yeah, I do think it's nice to take a break, but I don't really do it very much. I mean, this is like a new thing that I'm trying. Um, yeah, I guess I don't really have many moments of not being inspired, because I have so many things going on that um
Mm.
if I can't do this one, I'll just go over to the other one and do that one now, stuff like that. So there's always, as a self-employed person also, there's always more to do, and that can be, obviously that can be a bad thing, because like you said, sometimes you just forget that you need to stop and like actually live
Mhm.
a little bit. And
Yeah.
and on the other hand, it is nice that you can kind of like switch between things. I have a friend, her name is Jessica Hish. She's a designer, illustrator, lettering artist. She's amazing. And she described recently as it feel like for her, all of her activities, because she does a lot of things, they feel like she just has a rather large stove and all the pits are burning, but they're not all burning at the same level of heat. So if this one needs the attention and it goes on hot, then the other ones go a little bit lower, but they're still going. And I thought that was a very apt description that I could relate to.
Yeah. That's a really nice way of looking at it. For me, it's more there's plates spinning everywhere and they're all smashing on the floor, and I'm trying to pick them all up and keep them all going at the same time. But that's really nice. Yeah, I think with creativity is just such an interesting one. I think it's very easy. It's good to be able to have that time to run with a creative idea and a creative concept and really lean into that hyper focusing. And I think managing that in the right way is the secret, perhaps, to kind of keeping all of these things going and taking that time out, but leaning into it when you need to. So what's your kind of what's the future then for you in terms of your ADHD? You know, what are you looking to improve or find out?
Well, in the next, my focus for the next year, one of the goals I have is to further kind of like professionalize my operation. Now, I've been working as a professional for a long time, but some of my systems I never really, they kind of like are tied together with string and duct tape. And in the last month or so, I've started like really looking at all these systems that cause extra work, that cause maybe sometimes for me to forget about something or to miss something. I've kind of been putting into place these processes um, and different tools to keep that whole admin side and the whole sales side of things at a higher level than it has been. Everything has worked fine. It's always been good and whatever, but it takes so much of your brain power and so much of your energy to keep that all going, and it does have to. If I put into place a couple of these things, which I have been lately, I can immediately already tell the difference in terms of the amount of energy I have to expend on that side of the business. And then, just other than that, just like further trying out like this medicine side of things and seeing if we can get to a good place with that, where I can be both relaxed as well as focused. Uh, it's already helped quite a bit with my focus, so that's quite nice.
That's great. And then lastly, have you got a kind of any messages or a message of encouragement or a tip that maybe you can share to everybody listening that could perhaps kind of help them on their journey?
I think it's one thing that's always been quite difficult for me, but I do think it's very important, is to try to treat yourself with the same kindness and generosity and patience as we hopefully treat others, because we can be, everybody can be, but I think maybe especially this group of people, very hard on ourselves. They can be um, issues of shame around some of these challenges, and we would probably be quite a bit nicer and more gentle about it if it was not ourselves but someone else that we care about dealing with those things. And so I think it's important to try to remember that and also put it on yourself that way.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. I'm definitely a culprit for being hard on myself all the time. Like, yeah, I need to get better at that. So I think that's very important. So thank you very much. Where can people find your work and find you online?
My main outlet really is my newsletter, the weekly newsletter, and that can be found at readprocess.co. So read READ and then process as you would expect it. And then you can find me on Instagram just at Wesley, my first name. And yeah, those are good places to start. And you already mentioned Wesley.co as my website, which is also where you can purchase my photo books and things like that, and mentor sessions and workshops.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, and also just to be so open about your journey. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure everybody else listening will as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Dave.
No worries. Thank you. Okay, thanks so much for hanging out today. Look, if you related to any of this, the struggles, the wins, the holy cow, that's me moments, you need to be part of the ADHD Creative Club. This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement of neurodivergent creatives who are figuring this stuff out together. Head to theadhdcreative.club and sign up for tips, strategies, and real talk on surviving and thriving as a creative entrepreneur with ADHD. I'm Dave Neal, and remember, every single person you heard on this podcast felt exactly the same as you at some point. Lost, overwhelmed, wondering if they could make it work, and now look at them. Now it's your turn. See you in the next episode. Cheers.